In Defense of the Bush by Banjo Paterson, Andrew Barton. So you're back from up the country, Mr. Lawson, where you went, and you're cursing all the business in a bitter discontent. Well, we grieve to disappoint you, and it makes us sad to hear that it wasn't cool and shady, and there wasn't whips of beer, and the loony bullock snorted when you first came into view. Well, you know it's not so often that he sees a swell like you, and the roads were hot and dusty, and the plains were burnt and brown, and no doubt you're better suited drinking lemon squash in town. Yet, perchance, if you should journey down the very track you went in a month or two at furthest, you would wonder what it meant. Where the sun-baked earth was gasping like a creature in its pain, you would find the grasses waving like a field of summer grain, and the miles of thirsty gutters, blocked with sand and choked with mud, you would find them mighty rivers with a turbid, sweeping flood. For the rain and drought and sunshine make no changes in the street, in the sullen line of buildings and the ceaseless tramp of feet, but the bush has moods and changes, as the seasons rise and fall, and the men who know the bush land, they are loyal through it all. But you found the bush was dismal in a land of no delight. Did you chance to hear a chorus in the shearers' huts at night? Did they rise up William Riley by the campfire's cheery blaze? Did they rise him as we rose him in the good old droving days? And the women of the homesteads and the men you chanced to meet, were their faces sour and saddened like the faces in the street? And the shy selector children, were they better now or worse than the little city urchins who would greet you with a curse? Is not such a life much better than the squalid street and square where the fallen women flaunted in the fierce electric glare? Wher the seamstress plies her needle till her eyes are sore and red in a filthy, dirty attic toiling on for daily bread? Did you hear no sweeter voices in the music of the bush than the roar of trams and buses, and the war whoop of the push? Did the magpies rouse your slumbers with their carol sweet and strange? Did you hear the silver chiming of the bellbirds on the range? But, perchance, the wild bird's music by your senses was despised, for you say you'll stay in townships till the bush is civilized. Would you make it a tea garden, and on Sundays have a band where the blokes might take their donas, with a public close at hand? You had better stick to Sydney and make merry with the push, for the bush will never suit you, and you'll never suit the bush. Extra info, The Bulletin, July 23, 1892. The Bush Controversy in 1892. Banjo Paterson and Henry Lawson, his friend and CO contributor to the Bulletin, decided to have a little fun, and to stir up a controversy in their poems. Henry Lawson set out to criticize the optimistic picture the banjo painted of the bush, and the banjo in turn railed against the doom and gloom of Lawson's outlook. Other poets became willing participants in this poetic altercation, and their poems are represented by these poems. July 9, 1892 Henry Lawson Borderland, later retitled Up the Country. July 23, 1892 Banjo Paterson in Defense of the Bush. July 30, 1892 Edward Dyson The Fact of the Matter. August 6, 1892 Henry Lawson in Answer to Banjo, and Otherwise, later, The City Bushman. August 20, 1892 HHCC. The Overflow of Clancy. August 27, 1892 Francis Kenna Banjo of the Overflow. October 1, 1892 Banjo Paterson in Answer to Various Bards, later, An Answer to Various Bards. October 8, 1892 Henry Lawson The Poets of the Tomb. October 20, 1894 Banjo Paterson A Voice from the Town. Paterson described the Bulletin battle in these words: Henry Lawson was a man of remarkable insight in some things and of extraordinary simplicity in others. We were both looking for the same reef, if you get what I mean, but I had done my prospecting on horseback with my meals cooked for me, while Lawson has done his prospecting on foot and had to cook for himself. Nobody realized this better than Lawson, and one day he suggested that we should write against each other, he putting the bush from his point of view, and I putting it from mine. We ought to do pretty well out of it, he said. We ought to be able to get in 3 or 4 sets of verses before they stop us. This suited me all right, for we were working on space, and the pay was very small, so we slam-banged away at each other for weeks and weeks, not until they stopped us, but until we ran out of material. Banjo Paterson tells his own story. Sydney Morning Herald, February 4 to March 4, 1939.